When my father retired, I delivered a speech about his sacrifices for our family, but afterward, my uncle pulled me aside and told me the truth. My father had lied about his struggles and abandoned his first family before us. The hero I admired was a stranger. I stood at that podium looking out at 200 faces, my chest swelling with pride as I talked about my father's sacrifices. How he worked 3 jobs to put me through college. How he never missed a single soccer game despite his exhaustion. How he taught me that family comes first always. My father is proof that good men exist, I said, voice cracking with emotion. He showed me what it means to be devoted, loyal, and selfless. The applause was thunderous. Dad wiped his eyes. Mom beamed from the front row. I felt like I was honoring a saint. But 20 minutes later my uncle cornered me by the dessert table. His face looked haunted. We need to talk, he whispered. About father. About who he really was before we're born. The words hit like ice water. What are talking about, Uncle Mike? He glanced around nervously. Not here. Meet me at Denny's on 5th Street tomorrow at noon. There's something need to know about the man just called a hero. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Dad had always been vague about his before. Mom said his first marriage didn't work out, and left it at that. We never pushed because he seemed genuinely by the topic. I should have left it alone. Should have ignored Uncle Mike's cryptic warning and kept living in my perfect bubble where Dad was Superman, and our family was built on solid ground. But I didn't. The next day at Denny's, Uncle Mike slid a manila envelope across the sticky table. His hands shook as he pushed it toward me. Father had another family before yours, he said quietly. A wife named Sarah. 2 kids, Tommy and Emma. Tommy was 8, Emma was 5 when Dad left them. My coffee grew cold as he continued. Sarah was pregnant with their 3rd child when Father started his affair with Mother. He promised Sarah he was going to marriage counseling, that he wanted to work things out, but he was already planning his exit strategy. The envelope contained photographs. A younger version of my father smiling with a woman I'd never seen. 2 beautiful children with his eyes. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings. A hole I never knew existed. He cleaned out their savings account the night he left. Uncle Mike continued. Took everything except what was legally required for child support. Sarah had to move back in with her parents. She was 7 months pregnant and suddenly a single mother with no warning. My hands trembled as I flipped through the photos. There was my father teaching a little boy to ride a bike. The same patient smile he'd given me. The same gentle hand steady in small shoulders. The baby, little Michael, was born premature. Sarah thinks it was the stress. Father never even came to the hospital. Never held his 3rd son. I felt sick. Why are telling me this now? Because listening to speech last night, hearing praise him for being loyal and devoted, Uncle Mike's voice broke. Those kids deserve that loyalty too. Sarah deserved that devotion. And Father gave them nothing but betrayal and abandonment. The photos showed glimpses of the aftermath too. Sarah looking exhausted and hollow-eyed holding a tiny baby in the ICU. The older kids clinging to their mother at what looked like a custody hearing. My father wasn't in any of those later pictures. He paid the minimum child support for 6 months. Uncle Mike said. Then he moved states with Mother and stopped altogether. Sarah couldn't afford to chase him legally. I stared at a photo of little Emma on a tire swing, her face bright with pure joy. My father was pushing her, laughing. The date stamp showed it was taken just 3 months before he abandoned them. What happened to them? Sarah remarried eventually. A good man who adopted the kids and gave them his name. But Tommy, he struggled, had behavioral problems in school, trust issues. Emma developed anxiety that lasted years. And little Michael grew never knowing his biological father existed. My chest felt tight. Does Dad know her telling me this? Uncle Mike shook his head. Father thinks his past is buried. He's built this perfect image with family. Convinced everyone including himself that he's this devoted family man. But leopards don't change their spots. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend the man who'd been my hero for 32 years. But the evidence was right there in glossy photographs. The proof of a pattern I'd been too blind to see. Because here's what Uncle Mike didn't know yet. Here's the real reason his words so deep. 6 months ago I'd started my own affair. It began innocently enough. Jessica worked in my office 2 departments over. She was brilliant, funny, and everything my wife Lisa wasn't. Where Lisa was practical and grounded, Jessica was spontaneous and exciting. Where Lisa preferred quiet nights at home, Jessica wanted adventure. The first time we had coffee together, I told it was just friendly colleague conversation. When coffee turned into lunch, I convinced we were just becoming good friends. When lunch became long walks and deep conversations about our dreams and disappointments, I rationalized that everyone needs a confidant. The first time I kissed her, I was on the fantasy that I'd found my soulmate in the wrong person at the wrong time. But sitting in that Denny's booth, staring at photos of my father's abandoned children, I saw the truth with brutal clarity. I wasn't having an affair because Jessica was special, or because Lisa and I had grown apart. I was having an affair because I was my father's son. Because when things got difficult or routine, running away felt easier than fighting for what I'd committed to. Lisa and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years. The fertility treatments were expensive and emotionally draining. The scheduled intimacy had the spontaneity out of our relationship. We'd both gained weight from stress eating. Our conversations revolved around ovulation calendars and doctor's appointments. It wasn't exciting anymore. It was hard work. So instead of being the husband Lisa needed during the hardest period of our marriage, I found escape in Jessica's attention. In stolen moments that felt electric because they were forbidden. In the fantasy that someone else could love me without the messy complications of real commitment. Just like my father had done. Uncle Mike was still talking, but his words sounded far away. He was explaining how Sarah had tried to maintain some connection between the kids and their father. How she'd sent photos and report cards that were never acknowledged. How Tommy had written letters that were never answered. All I could think about was Lisa at home, probably reading fertility blogs and taking her prenatal vitamins even though we hadn't conceived yet. She still believed in us, still believed in the future we'd planned together, and I was planning to destroy it all for the same selfish reasons my father had destroyed his first family. I have to go, I mumbled, shoving the photos back into the envelope. Keep those, Uncle Mike said. Need to understand who father really is, and more importantly, need to make sure don't become him. Too late for that, I thought as I stumbled out of the restaurant. I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the photos of children I'd never known existed. Kids who shared my DNA and my abandonment issues that I was apparently genetically programmed to pass on. That night I looked at Lisa differently. She was washing dishes and humming softly to herself, completely unaware that her husband was living a double. The same way Sarah had been unaware until the day my father packed his bags and shattered her world. Lisa caught me staring and smiled. Okay honey, I've been quiet since the party yesterday. I almost told her everything right then. Almost came clean about Jessica and ended the affair before it destroyed us both. Instead, I kissed her forehead and mumbled something about being tired. Because the hardest truth wasn't that my father was it was that his son was following exactly in his footsteps 3 weeks after Uncle Mike's revelation. I was still meeting Jessica in secret. Still telling I could manage both relationships without anyone getting. Still believing I was different from my father cause I was just having an emotional affair, not planning to abandon my family. The delusion shattered on a Thursday evening when Lisa found Jessica's earring in our car. I'd been sloppy. We'd gone to lunch and she'd left it on the passenger seat. Such a small thing, a tiny silver hoop that cost maybe $20. But it might as well have been a confession letter. Whose is this? Lisa asked, holding it as I walked through the front door. My mouth went dry. I don't know, maybe it fell out of someone's purse when I gave them a ride. The lie came so easily, just like it probably had for my father 33 years ago. Lisa's face changed. I watched the trust drain from her eyes in real time, replaced by a sick recognition that something was terribly wrong. "We've been different lately," she said quietly. "Distant, always on phone, working late more often. Lisa, I can explain. Air cheating on me." The question hung in the air like smoke. I could have denied it, could have gotten angry and accused her of being paranoid, could have bought more time to figure out an exit strategy. Instead, looking at my wife's face crumbling with betrayal, I thought about Sarah finding out my father was leaving. About Tommy and Emma watching their hero pack his bags. About little Michael who would grow without a father because one man chose his own happiness over his family's security. "Yes," I whispered. Lisa sat down our couch. The same couch where we'd celebrated her acceptance to grad school. Where we'd planned our wedding. Where we'd held each other and cried after the third failed fertility treatment. How long? 6 months. When she pressed her hands to her face. When she looked, her eyes were red but her voice was steady. Do love her. I wanted to lie again. Wanted to minimize it and make it seem like meaningless physical attraction. But Lisa deserved honesty, even if it destroyed her. I think so. The sound she made wasn't quite a sob. More like air being forcibly expelled from her lungs. Air leaving me for her. And there it was. The question that would determine whether I was just like my father or somehow different. I thought about the photos in my car. About Tommy writing unanswered letters. About Sarah struggling alone with a premature baby while my father started fresh with a new woman. I thought about Jessica, who had no idea I was having this conversation. Who believed I was trapped in a loveless marriage, and just needed time to work the courage to leave. Who saw herself as the victim in this story, waiting for a man who kept promising to choose her. I thought about Lisa, who had supported me through career changes and family drama and my father's retirement speech just weeks ago. Who still took prenatal vitamins hoping we'd conceive soon. Who trusted me enough to ask direct questions instead of hiring a private investigator or going through my phone. I don't know, I said. It was the most honest answer I'd given in months, and it broke us both. Lisa stood slowly. I need to leave tonight. Go stay somewhere else while I figure out what I'm gonna do. Lisa, please, we can work through this. Counseling. Whatever need. Had an affair for 6 months, she said, her voice getting stronger. 6 months of lying to my face every single day. 6 months of letting me believe we were trying to build a family together while we're building a relationship with someone else. She was right. There was nothing to argue. Can I at least explain how it started? I know how it started. It started because we're a coward who runs away when things get hard instead of fighting for the people who love. The words hit like physical blows cause they were absolutely true. I packed a bag while Lisa sat in our bedroom doorway watching me, not crying anymore, just observing like she was memorizing details for a police report. We'll tell people, I asked. I'll tell them the truth if they ask. That my husband cheated on me and I'm deciding whether my marriage is worth saving. And if it's not. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Then I'll be just another man who destroyed his family for temporary excitement. Just like father. The comparison stung because I'd been thinking the same thing for weeks. I drove to a hotel and called Jessica from the parking lot. Lisa found out, I said when she answered. Silence. What does that mean for us, Lisa? Or, air okay? Just what it meant for us. I don't know. I need time to think. Think about what? Said love me. Said want a future together. She was right, I had said those things. In stolen moments between lies to my wife. It's complicated, Jess. No, it's not. Either want to be with me or want to stay with her. Can't have both anymore. After we hung, I sat in that hotel room staring at the photos Uncle Mike had given me, trying to find some difference between my father's story and mine. Some proof that I wasn't destined to repeat his pattern of destruction. But the evidence was overwhelming. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike and throw a baseball had also taught his first son those same skills before abandoning him. The father who'd attended every one of my school plays had missed every important moment in 3 other children's lives. And I was following the same choices, justifying the same betrayals. The next morning, Lisa called me at work. I've been thinking all night, she said, about us, about whether people can really change. What did decide? I'm pregnant. The words stopped my world. What? I found out yesterday morning. I was gonna surprise with dinner and the ultrasound photo. That's when I found the earring. I felt like I was drowning. How far along? 8 weeks. I'm due in March. 8 weeks. Right in the middle of my affair with Jessica. While I was planning a future with another woman, Lisa was carrying our child. Does this change anything? She asked. It changed everything. And nothing at all. Because here's what I realized in that moment: my father probably had moments of doubt too. Probably wondered if he was making the right choice when he left his pregnant wife. Probably told himself he'd be a better father to his next kids than he was to his first ones. But patterns don't break just because circumstances change. They break when people choose to break them. I want to come home, I said. That's not what I asked. She was right. She'd asked if it changed anything. If knowing she was carrying our child would make me a different kind of man than my father had been. The honest answer was that I didn't know if I was capable of being different. I'd already proven I could lie to her face for 6 months. Already proven I could prioritize my own desires over her well-being. Already proven I inherited my father's talent for compartmentalizing betrayal. I need to end things with Jessica first, I said. Do whatever need to do. But understand this: if choose to come back. It's not because of the baby. It's not because got caught. It's because committed to becoming a man worthy of being a father. And after we hung, I thought about Tommy, Emma and little Michael. About growing wondering why their father chose someone else over them. About the damage that kind of abandonment does to a child's sense of self-worth. I thought about my own child, 8 weeks along and already inheriting a legacy of infidelity and broken promises. That afternoon, I met Jessica at our usual coffee shop to end the affair. She cried, called me a coward, said I was choosing security over love, just like every other married man who'd ever strung along his mistress. She wasn't wrong about the coward part. But as I drove home to face Lisa and figure out if our marriage was salvageable, I realized something that terrified me more than Jessica's accusations. I still didn't know if I was ending the affair because it was the right thing to do, or because I'd been caught and staying with Lisa was the easier path. Just like I'd never know if my father left his first family for love or convenience. The only thing I knew for certain was that in 8 months, I'd be holding a child who deserved better than the man I'd proven to be. 6 months later, I was changing our daughter's diaper when she grabbed my finger and looked at me with eyes exactly like mine. The same eyes Tommy and Emma had in those old photographs. The same eyes that would either see me as a hero or a cautionary tale, depending on the choices I made from that moment forward. Lisa and I were trying, counseling twice a week. Long conversations about trust and forgiveness and whether broken things can ever really be fixed. Some days felt hopeful. Others felt like we were just going through the motions of reconciliation because divorce with a newborn seemed impossible. The hardest part wasn't rebuilding our relationship. It was living with the knowledge of who I really was underneath all the effort to be better. Because ending the affair didn't erase 6 months of lies. Going to counseling didn't undo the damage to Lisa's ability to trust me. Changing diapers and getting for midnight feedings didn't make me automatically worthy of being called Daddy. And holding my daughter while knowing I had 3 half-siblings who'd grown without their father made every moment of bonding feel borrowed. Like I was experiencing something that should have belonged to someone else. 3 weeks after Emma was born, we named her after my father's abandoned daughter, though Lisa didn't know why I suggested it. Uncle Mike called. I need to tell something else, he said, about father's first son Tommy. I went cold. What about him? He killed himself last month. He'd been struggling with addiction for years. I sat down our kitchen floor while Lisa fed Emma in the next room. Was it? Did my father know? Sarah reached out to him when Tommy went to rehab the first time. That was 3 years ago. Father never responded to her calls or letters. I thought about Tommy as a little boy, writing unanswered letters to the father who'd vanished from his. About growing believing he wasn't worth staying for. About carrying that wound into adulthood and trying to numb it with. There's more, Uncle Mike continued. Emma, his daughter, she found father online after Tommy died. Sent him a long message about what his abandonment did to their family. About how Tommy spent his whole thinking he was the reason their father left. What did Dad say? Nothing, he blocked her. That night, I stared at my sleeping daughter and wondered what kind of man I was raising her to trust. What kind of legacy I was passing down through my DNA and my choices. Lisa found me there at 3 a.m. still sitting by Emma's crib. Can't sleep, she asked softly. I told her everything. About Uncle Mike's revelations. About my father's first family. About Tommy's and Emma's blocked message and the pattern of abandonment that apparently ran in our family like a genetic disorder. Is that why I cheated? Lisa asked when I finished. Because thought we're destined to be like him. Maybe. I don't know. Does it matter? She was quiet for a long time. I think it matters because if believe are doomed to repeat his mistakes then probably will. But if believe can choose to be different, then maybe there's hope for us. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to think that self-awareness was enough to break generational patterns. But sitting there looking at Emma's perfect face, I felt the weight of everything she would inherit from me. Not just my eyes and my stubborn streak, but my capacity for selfishness. My talent for rationalization. My father's gift for compartmentalizing betrayal and moving forward without looking back at the damage. What if I can't be different? I whispered. Then our daughter will grow knowing that too. And she'll either spend her trying to earn love from men who can't really give it, or she'll learn to spot the warning signs and choose better. The brutal honesty of it took my breath away. 2 months later I did something my father never did. I reached out to Emma, his abandoned daughter who was now a 30-year-old woman with children of her own. I found her on social media and sent a message explaining who I was, that I was Tommy's half-brother, that I'd only recently learned about their existence and was devastated by Tommy's. She responded within hours. I wondered if father had other kids, she wrote. Tommy used to talk about finding his siblings someday. He wanted to know if existed and if knew about us. We started exchanging messages. She told me about their childhood. About Sarah's strength and eventual happiness with their stepfather. About little Michael, who was now in college and had grown believing his stepfather was his biological father. She told me about Tommy's struggles. About the behavioral problems that started right after our father left. About the addiction that began in high school and the multiple attempts at sobriety that never quite stuck. He wasn't a bad person, she wrote. Just someone who never learned how to trust that people would stay. Every relationship he had, he sabotaged before they could leave him first. Reading about Tommy's was like looking into a funhouse mirror. I saw my own trust issues reflected back in his story. My own fear of abandonment that had somehow twisted into a compulsion to abandon others first. I need to ask something, I wrote back. Do you think people can really change? Or are we all just doomed to repeat our parents' mistakes? Her response came the next day. I think the people who worry about becoming their parents are usually the ones who don't. It's the ones who never question themselves that have to watch out for. I wanted to believe her. But I kept thinking about all the moments I'd questioned during the affair and kept making the same destructive choices anyway. That weekend, Lisa and I took Emma to visit my parents. Dad held his granddaughter with the same gentle hands he'd once used to steady Tommy's bike. The same patient smile he'd given all his children before abandoning half of them. Watching him coo at Emma, I felt sick with the knowledge of what he was capable of. But I also felt something else, a desperate determination to make sure history didn't repeat itself. After dinner, I asked to speak with him privately. We sat in his garage surrounded by tools and half-finished projects, just like we had when I was a kid and needed advice about girls or school, or what it meant to be a man. I know about Sarah and the kids, I said without preamble. His face went white then hard. What about them? I know abandoned family before us. I know about Tommy and Emma and Michael. I know Tommy died last month and didn't even acknowledge it. Dad stood abruptly. That's ancient history. It has nothing to do with our family. It has everything to do with my family. Because I almost made the same choices did. I told him about Jessica. About the affair and how close I'd come to destroying my marriage. About sitting in that hotel room staring at photos of his abandoned children and recognizing in his pattern of betrayal. Don't know what talking about, he said angrily. Don't know what my marriage to Sarah was like. Don't know what I was going through. Then tell me. Help me understand how a man who taught me that family comes first could abandon 3 children. But he couldn't, or wouldn't. Just kept insisting that I didn't understand the circumstances, that it was complicated, that sometimes people have to make impossible choices. The same justifications I'd used during my affair. Tommy wrote letters, I said. He died thinking he wasn't worth staying for. That's not my fault. I couldn't stay in a marriage that was me. Could have stayed in his. Could have been his father even if weren't Sarah's husband. It's too late for this conversation, Dad said. What's done is done. That's when I understood the real difference between us. It wasn't that I was incapable of his level of abandonment. It was that I was still young enough to choose differently. Still close enough to the beginning of my own story to write a different ending. Dad had made peace with his choices decades ago. Had built a new identity as a devoted family man and buried the evidence of who he'd been before. He literally couldn't afford to acknowledge the damage he'd caused, because it would shatter the image he'd constructed of himself. But I was still in the messy middle of my own story. Still close enough to the betrayal to remember how it felt to lie to Lisa's face. Still horrified enough by the discovery of my capacity for selfishness to want to do better. That night I wrote Emma a longer message. Told her about confronting our father and his refusal to acknowledge the damage he'd caused. Told her about my own daughter and my terror that I might pass down the same legacy of abandonment. I can't undo what he did to family, I wrote. But I want to know that Tommy mattered. That all mattered. And that I'm going to spend the rest of my trying to be a different kind of father than the man who abandoned Ply. She wrote back. Tommy would have liked knowing he had a brother who understood. Who was trying to break the cycle instead of repeating it. 8 months later, Lisa and I were doing better. Not perfect but better. Trust was still fragile. Intimacy was still complicated by the memory of betrayal. But we were building something new on the foundation of brutal honesty about who we really were. Emma was walking now, taking wobbling steps between the coffee table and the couch. Every milestone felt like a small miracle and a heavy responsibility. She was growing in a family that had been broken and partially repaired, with parents who were learning how to love each other again after betrayal. But she was also growing with a father who knew his own capacity for selfishness and was choosing daily to be better. Who understood that being worthy of her trust wasn't a birthright, but something that had to be earned through consistent actions over time. The hardest part was accepting that I might always be the man who cheated on his pregnant wife. That no amount of good choices moving forward would erase that chapter of our story. That Emma would someday learn that her father wasn't the hero she believed him to be as a child, but maybe that would be its own gift. Maybe growing with a father who was honest about his failures would teach her something more valuable than growing with one who pretended to be perfect. Maybe she'd learn to choose partners based on their actions, not their words. Maybe she'd understand that love isn't just a feeling but a choice make over and over again, especially when it's hard. Or maybe she'd inherit my talent for rationalization and self-destruction. Maybe she'd grow to break hearts the way I broke Lisa's, the way my father broke Sarah's. The truth is, I'll never know if I'm really different from my father until it's too late to change course. I'll never know if the effort I'm putting into being better is genuine growth, or just another form of selfishness, motivated by my desire to see as redeemed rather than truly caring about the people I've. All I know is that Tommy died believing he wasn't worth staying for, and I'm raising a daughter who will either grow knowing she's worth everything or believing that love always comes with conditions and escape clauses. The weight of that responsibility should terrify me. And it does. But it also drives me to be present for every diaper change, every bedtime story, every moment she needs me to be the father she deserves rather than the one I'm naturally inclined to be. Because the cruelest truth I've learned is that becoming a better person doesn't erase the person you used to be. It just means have to live with both versions of forever, hoping the better one wins more often than it loses. And some days when Emma looks at me with complete trust and Lisa actually smiles without that flicker of wariness in her eyes, I think maybe that's enough. But then I remember Tommy's unanswered letters and my father's blocked messages, and I know that, enough, is a luxury that men like us don't get to claim. We get to work every day to earn what we destroyed, knowing we might never fully succeed, because the alternative is passing down our damage to another generation. The only thing worse than being father's son is raising father's grandchildren, to repeat the same mistakes, thinking they're destined for something better while carrying the same in there.